All right, what's going on, everybody? I hope that you're having a good day. I am inspired to share this video after working with a client today, and how many times it comes up that people in life are getting bullied or verbally abused, or people are taking advantage of other people. And I just wanted to share some techniques and strategies for dealing with these types of people. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the psychology of a bully, the power of a pattern interrupt, how you need to make a request, and I'm going to give you basically a complete understanding of strategies to deal with bullies, and also a plan from A to B on what you can do when you face your next encounter. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the psychology of a bully. Somebody who basically goes out there and they're basically making your life worse. They're unkind, they're mean, they're looking to ruin your day. And I'm sure that we've all come across those people before, and we've experienced them, ideally not too much, and some of us more than others. So the first thing to understand about a bully is that old saying is that hurt people, meaning that nobody out there in the world that is having an amazing day, that life is good, that their parents are awesome to them, that their job is going great, that their home life is amazing, that they feel healthy, they don't go out there and try and ruin your day. They're having a great time. Those kind of people are probably going to help you have a better day. So, you know, a lot of times you'll see, if you look at more serious cases of people who commit crimes, who are go to jail for assault, or, you know, worse crimes, you know, murder and all the super intense ones. Those people 9 times out of 10 came from a very broken home. They were abused as kids. They didn't know what to do, and they're basically just enacting patterns. They had a really, really traumatic childhood. And normally you'll see the worse a human being is, the more challenging and terrible their life experience has been. So that's something to really keep in mind, is that, you know, that hurt person is probably going to try to just, you know, act out because they're in pain. So hurt people. That's really important to understand. And then from that, you can do your best to filter what's happening, and them directing it at you, to filter it through compassion, to understand from knowing that that person's probably having a terrible day, things are going horribly for them. You can come from a space of compassion and saying, okay, great. Obviously this person's not having the best day. How can I treat them with respect, or just pump the brakes and not just act out of anger or fear or anything else from any of those points of view. So just doing your best to understand that and then act from compassion. So this is really challenging to do, but it's to not take what they're saying personally, because it's not about you. You know, if they're out there and they're bullying you, or they're verbally abusive, or your boss is a total a-hole, it's not about you. And even if you make a mistake, let's say it is about you. They say, Matt, you had this request and I had this experience. You know, I made a mistake, and my boss, we'd gone through this, and he knew, I didn't tolerate, being verbally abused or yelled at. And he goes, Matt, I'm going to yell at you. And I was like, all right, let's see how this goes. And so he's really upset about something that I did and I made an error on. And I just let him say that, and it was over the phone. And then I said, okay, I'm sorry, my mistake. That was my mistake, and I can correct that. So if it is in that scenario, you can take ownership for what you've done, and you can apologize sincerely. That's all you can do. But mistakes are okay; they're a part of it. It doesn't mean that you can be verbally abused each and every day. That's going way too far with it. So another really key point is to understand that this is another old saying, is that people will treat you as you allow them to. People will treat you as you let them treat you. So some people have different tolerance scales for how people treat you. So that's another important thing to understand. One thing you could do is you could walk in the other direction. It's a fantastic strategy, depending. There's a lot of different scenarios. It gets a little bit tricky when you're at work and it's your boss and it's your livelihood and your boss is being a total a-hole. It's another thing to be a kid in school or to be bullied on the street. So I'm hoping to speak to all of those different aspects of people just receiving any kind of abuse and hopefully helpful strategies to deal with that. But the psychology is a very, very important thing. So just understand that people will treat you how you allow them to. So to figure out like your own code for how people will talk to you, and you could write it down. You know, people will treat me with kindness and respect. And if they don't, I will do A, B, and C. And that doesn't mean whack them with the stick. It means like I'll walk away from the situation. I will choose a different friend. I will do something else because, you know, you're going to tolerate whatever you're going to tolerate. So keep that in mind. So here, let's get into the strategies. And this is a really great one that'll work like magic. And it's called a pattern interrupt. And it's used in hypnosis. It's used in psychology. It's used in sales. It's used all over the place. And if you look up the work of Darren Brown, he does it excellently. And what it does is basically when you're on your train of thought and then all of a sudden you start to think about a hippopotamus drinking a cloud on top of a spaceship. So for you to make sense of what I just said, you had to take your consciousness and you had to go backwards. What I said was ridiculous. It made no sense. I could also just be on the video and just start talking to you and telling you like, how is your day going? You know, tell me all about your day. And you're getting really mad at me or something. And you're like the angry person. And I just start doing some weird crap. And it can be subtle. Or it can be completely ridiculous. It's totally up to you. But what happens is it takes their consciousness and their train of thought of like, Matt, you bearded son of a gun. It's the worst podcast I've ever heard. You're just talking crap all the time and you smell. And all of a sudden I start doing this, or like I step backwards or forward, or I just like start rubbing my nose, or just, you know, tugging my ear, something weird. What it does is it takes their consciousness and their train of thought where they're just going to keep going and keep going. And it stops that because they're going to be confused about what's happening. You could think of a ridiculous sentence. You could say, hold on. Have you ever considered what a purple panda would do on a Sunday? And they would just have to, what I just did to myself is like, and you have to think about it, and it's absurd, but it stops it. And you could go a step further with this. If you interrupt their pattern and basically, you know, you're going to start to take a little bit more control of the situation. If they just run you over, whatever this person's problem is, if they just run you over, they're going to keep running over the next person. So it's kind of like a runaway van, you know, they're going to run you over and then they're going to run over the next person. So it'd be great if you had the power to interrupt that pattern of them just losing their crap. And again, just remind yourself that, you know, hurt people. Maybe their life left them. Maybe their dad said something terrible to them that day. Maybe their life sucks and they're having a challenge because they wouldn't be acting that way if it didn't. My friends that I grew up with, very fortunate to have really wonderful friends. They all came from really great families who were supportive, who were kind to them, who, you know, obviously had to put them in line when we did stupid stuff. That happened. But they were good parents, and my friends were good to people. When we were in high school, we didn't, you know, haze the younger kids. We didn't, you know, make them feel crap. And yeah, we made mistakes and we said stuff we probably shouldn't have. And maybe we bullied sometimes, like by, you know, just being in high school. I can't remember like anything specific, but I'm sure I have some things that I could ask forgiveness for, but it wasn't our main intention because, you know, we were more inclusive. We're being kind to others. We were trying to uplift others because that's what you do when you have a support network. And if you don't have that, then you're probably going to act the other way. So just, again, keep that in mind as you're dealing with those people. So one really easy strategy that I said as well is like the person's coming at you, and depending on the situation, a lot of the times you could actually literally just walk away. I don't know if I share the whole story. Am I share this whole story? Yeah. Okay. I don't think I've shared this whole story yet. So I'm going to share the whole story. I was in Guatemala recently, and I was there for the Mayan fire ceremony. And so Mayan elders were doing a ceremony in Tikal, and this is the first fire ceremony, I believe, in Tikal after the indigenous people got massacred. They were wanting to do their ceremony in Guatemala at this sacred site that they've done it for years. And the government actually massacred, I think, 20,000 of them, or maybe 200,000. I look it up. Guatemala massacred, just so I can get the facts right on that, because I can't remember. But they massacred a lot of people, and because they just wanted to do their ceremony. And anyway, I was there because they were going to do another ceremony in this sacred spot after that massacre, and it was a really special event. And so while I was there, I was going to do some hiking, and I did some exploring around Guatemala. And I decided to do a morning volcano hike tour. And so we left early in the morning. It was at sunrise and like before sunrise. So I think I had to get up at 3:30 in the morning or something, and it was an hour drive. And so we drive like 50 minutes into the, outskirts and Guatemalan kind of jungle, very, very rural area. And we start walking into this forest, into this Guatemalan jungle at night. And I'm the last person on the end of the line. And I'm walking through and going through the forest, and it's night, and it's a beautiful sky. And I think it's probably like 4 a.m. The sun hasn't come up yet. We got to hike about an hour up to, it's 40 minutes, an hour to get to the top of the hill. And so we're in there, and we're about like 5 minutes into the jungle, and I'm looking up and enjoying the sky. Again, I'm the last person in line, and I kind of get like a sense that someone is behind me. And so, I just kind of look behind me, and it's pitch black. Can't see anything. You just see the shape and the outline of the trees, kind of like this guy, but even bigger than that. So walking through, and then like after I look back and try to see anything, probably like within 30 seconds or so, I hear footsteps, and I turn and I look around, and basically as I look around, this is what I'm greeted to: this gun right in my face, this close, with a guy, and he had a bandana across his face, and I could just see his eyes, and he had a hat, and he had a lamp on, and it was pitch black. It was super dark night, and it was just this lamp in my face blinding me, and I could see at least one guy behind him. I don't know how many other people there was, but super big gun in my face. It was like one of those revolvers, old gray, looked like an old pistol. And so now what I chose to do, like I'm a martial artist, and I've done martial arts my whole life, and all that stuff is well and good, but like, you don't mess with a guy with a gun and a knife. And and the reason why I say that is because like, I didn't choose this. This was like my body's reaction. And I don't know if it's a good reaction. I don't know if it's a bad reaction. It's just what it did. Cause I didn't have the time. It's 4 a.m, turn around, there's a gun in my face. But I also understood that traveling, that was a possibility. And I've gone over this scenario in my mind where like, if somebody's pointing a gun at you, robbing you, they want your stuff. So anyway, my reaction, which is a little bit absurd, was I heard this footsteps. I turned around, bam, gun right at my head within a few inches, guy in a mask. And this is what I did. I looked at him, and I just turned away and kept walking. And there was like a pause, and I walked probably like 5-6 paces or whatever. And then I hear something, and I know he's still behind me. So I turn around again. I look at him, gun in the face. Now he's saying something in Spanish, which I don't understand because I don't speak Spanish. I look at him. I look at the other guy. I turn around and I walk away again. And I just basically walk away. Now, again, I didn't choose this. I would have loved to do some sort of epic Bruce Lee thing and like kick with my foot and then like right in the face, and it's just like a perfect clean knockout. Would have been great, but I didn't have time to filter all those options. It was just happening. My body was just reacting to whatever was going. And again, I don't know if this is the best way. Probably not. Probably the best thing is just to sit down and like listen to them. So I keep walking away again. Third time comes around, and turn around, and he's got the gun in my face, and he's kind of like, pointing, yelling and pointing down, and I'm just watching him. And this time he kind of like steps back, and he's like, get down. And at finally this time, the group of people noticed what was happening, because I was the very last person in the line. And now the group had caught on to what was happening in the scenario. And so they're looking like, oh, and so I look back, and all the group was on the ground. I look back, and now the guy who was like waving, pointing the gun, he had taken a step back at this point and was waving the gun on the ground. Then he had stepped back and he fired the gun. Gunshot goes in the air, and I was like, oh my goodness, maybe I should probably get down, considering everybody is on their hands and knees. And so I'm looking at the guy, and I just kind of get down my hands and knees and like watch him, and he circles around me and starts to get all the people's stuff. Gets to the end of the line, he's saying things in Spanish, kicks our guide that we had, and then shoots the gun, and then pieces out into the forest. That's it, kind of a long story short at the end of it. And I realized after talking to the people after that, as I was just sitting there being like just staring at him, being non-compliant, everybody got rid of their stuff. And so it's a bit of a ridiculous story. Again, I wouldn't recommend that scenario. I don't know why I did that. I would just trust your body and your instinct. There's a great book called The Gift of Fear, and it talks about the body's intelligence and things like that. The guide had said that there were 2 other people. So even if I had, laid a sweet Bruce Lee ass kicking on guy number 1, there was another guy with a gun, keep in mind, and I didn't know if there were any other guys. So non-confrontation is probably the best idea. But the reason I'm telling you this story is because that, in hindsight, what I'm realizing is a full-on pattern interrupt. That guy was going through the forest to get his stuff, pulled a gun. I looked at him and I ignored it. And he just must have been like, what the heck? And he had to go into his own consciousness to figure out what was going on. And if you think about martial arts and judo and so many different arts, they talk about the energy coming in, 2 points, right? Anger versus anger, whacking each other. And so when his energy is going like this and he's following me, right? I get the attention. I turn back. Now our energy is at a point, and his heart's going to be going. He's like, oh my goodness, I got a gun. I got to rob this guy. And the friggin' thing was loaded, so he could have killed someone. So he would have to consider the consequences of that action just to get our things. And so when we met and then I turned around, now the energy's going this way, and he has to actually follow me and do it again. So he's going to have to reconsider everything. And it was just an unexpected circumstance. He just did not expect that response. So you can use this in your daily life, and you might be thinking, oh, this is really silly. Let's say your boss is yelling at you, right? And you just kind of like, do this with your hands or something. He's going to be like, I don't know, why are you doing that with your hands? Or you might want to just make it really subtle so you don't piss them off, but just do something weird. And what it's going to do, it's going to make them think, you could be like, doing something weird with your eye and then like plugging your nose. I don't know. Just think of some stupid thing that you're going to do, and it interrupts their pattern, and they're going to have to think, and it blocks that train of thought. And then from there, you're starting to take control of the situation. When they use it in hypnosis, what they do is they pattern interrupt, and then they begin to lead the other person, right? So you could be like, do this thing, and you could, they're like, what are you doing? He's just like, what's really the problem? Or whatever, and meet them at their end. There's a lot of different things you could do, but I want to keep it nice and simple. So once you do something weird, you can walk away, or you just listen to them and they yell at you. You could put up your hands like just this without even a pattern interrupt and say, okay, so-and-so, I can understand that you're upset. And you want to give them some understanding, ideally. And then this is the next part of the strategy. It's very simple. Lots of science into this. It's really metaphysical and out there and profound. It's none of those things. It's very simple. It is, you just make a request. I understand that you're upset. Can you please speak to me in a different tone of voice? Is that fair? That second question, I think, is really important because, again, it puts themselves like it is fair. People understand that when you're yelling at somebody and you're beating them down, that it isn't fair, that it's not super great to be doing that to people. So you can just say, like, is that fair? And, and if they continue on, you can be more stern. Like, if you're going to continue speaking to me in this way, I'm going to leave. You can leave at any point that you want. Also, ideally, if you're not in a closed, confined space, if it's a workspace and you're dealing with your boss, bosses, there's workers have legal rights, so you don't have to take crap from your boss. People are really afraid of losing their job, but just speaking respectfully. And so the idea is not to have the energy up and like combative. You don't want to be like, you can't yell at me like that, because, again, it's meeting on the same wave. It's not on a compassionate wave. You might feel uncomfortable. You might feel afraid. You might feel negative in all these different ways. And that's like the compassionate mind and heart going in there, just being able to act with compassion, although you're pissed. And that's the idea. Another example that I'll give to illustrate that point is that, you know, when you're younger man, like I was, and you go to a bar and maybe you fight people because they say something stupid to you, right? You got to fight that guy, and you're fighting in high school. And then eventually, like, I should stop fighting people. And, you know, you go to the bar and someone's like, hey, you're an idiot. And I'm like, well, I got to fight that guy. He just called me an idiot. So go fight him. And then the next week he's like, you're an idiot. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna let that slide. And then he keeps going and going and going and going. And eventually he just keeps going. He's like, you know what? This guy won't stop. Now I'm going to tune him, and we're going to duke it out. And then eventually you get to the point where you're like, you don't fight. And then the next thing is like, you're at the bar or the scenario, and I'm using bar as like a cut and dry scenario for you. That the conflict comes in and they're just going over the top, and you understand that hurt people. 2, it is not about you. Even if you made a mistake, you can apologize for the mistake. That's it. And 3, how do you filter through with compassion? And you think like, you know, what's wrong with that person? Like, what are they going through today? Maybe they lost their puppy. We have no idea what happened to them. Maybe it's like, maybe they lost a parent. Maybe their spouses, who knows what is going on. So from that, I can understand something's wrong with this person. And I can think, hey, how can I help you? Like, what can I do? Can I get a drink for you? Can I help you in any way? And you treat the scenario so much differently than you would from just an aggressive tactic. So I just wanted to share that story to illustrate. Now, there's another thing that you can do in a work scenario and in any scenario, if you wish. It is the idea of seeking understanding from the person who is messing with you. And it's a very simple strategy. So they are yelling at you. Let's say it's your boss or someone, and they're like, whatever they're saying. So they say, hey, Matt, you know, you're supposed to do this job today and you did it terribly and you're always late and I don't like the clothes you wear. And, you know, your band on the weekend sucks. And I hate your dog and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay. And I'm taking all that, and it takes a bit of time not to feel attacked, even though they're attacking you. It's true. It's not about you. You know what I mean? No whole person, nobody who's having a good life is out there to just dummy your situation. It doesn't make any sense. What they're doing is they're not handling something happening in their life and their life in a really crappy way. And so I'm taking that all in and writing them like, and then when they're done, I can just say, okay, just let me see if I have the understanding here, and just repeat back what they said to you to the best of your ability. They probably won't recognize that you're just repeating back what they said, but they're going to feel understood. So you can say, okay, let me get this straight. I showed up at work today. I'm late. I'm an incompetent employee. You think that my band sucks. I can't do my job competently. You don't like the way I dress. You think that I smell, and my face is stupid. Do I understand you correctly? And they could be like, yeah. And like, okay, is there anything else? And you'll notice, like, if you do that, like, they're going to notice the ridiculousness of what they're doing most of the time. If they continue to go, that would be pretty extraordinary. It's a pretty extraordinary individual. And then you could exercise the strategy of the pattern interrupt. You could exercise the strategy of leaving. You could sprint in the other direction. And even if you're at work and you just sprinted in the other direction, your boss goes, what was that all about? And be like, well, you're yelling at me, or the boss was yelling at me, and I just decided to vacate the situation because I didn't see an opportunity to de-escalate. And that's reasonable. You can do that. But if you use that strategy of just repeating back what they said and seeking understanding and ask them if there's anything else, there's a very high probability of them relaxing, of them just realizing that it's not about you, that what they're doing is harmful, that they shouldn't do it. Because at our hearts, you know, 99% of us are compassionate. And what happens is we get stuck in the mind in reaction. That's all road rage is. That's all bullying is. That's all when people are being awful to each other. It's just reactionary. And they don't have that space to think or act through a filter of compassion or any of those things. So again, keep that in mind. So I think that is it for this video. So just a quick summary. If you're getting bullied, keep in mind the psychology of a bully. Hurt people hurt people. Nobody who's having a fantastic day is going out there being a total a-hole. Don't take it personally. To the best of your ability, it is not about you. It's about them. I know it sounds good. You might be all worked up and feel emotions. That's okay. You can feel the emotions. But understand, really, it's not about you, because, you know, people who are whole and having a good life and having a good time are not going out there being totally total pieces of work. Mistakes are okay. If you've made a mistake at a job, you can apologize for it, but it doesn't mean you should be kicked down a well and then continuously beaten into unconsciousness. So apologize for your mistakes, own up to the part that you can own up to, and move on and apologize. Remember the old saying, people treat you how you allow them to treat you. So figure out your own code of how you want to treat people. And then come up with a strategy. And what I've shared here is a few strategies. And so you might want to practice them. If you have a continuous bully, practice what it's going to be like to go through it. If you have a continuous boss who's a total a-hole, you can practice walking away. You can practice going through a filter of compassion as you're getting yelled at. You can practice a pattern interrupt and taking control of the situation. So, you know, moving the hands up a little bit, or you could like step left, and then you could step backwards, and then you step right, and then you step forward. And it'll be just enough for them to register and throw them off their game. And so you want to practice that. And, you know, so when the situation happens, you're going to be versed in it, because it sounds ridiculous, but you need to practice that scenario. Just like in the UFC, the greatest fighters of all time, they practice getting into really crappy situations where the opponent is just punching them with everything they have, and they have to stay calm, cool, and collected. So when they have that opportunity, they can get out, because you're almost never, even in professional fighting, if you have the skills, you're never stuck. Like eventually, you know, the opponent might be a little bit better and a little bit more skilled and get you into a pickle where you can tap out. But if you're going through that scenario, you train for it so you can find your escape. And so on a much lesser scale, you can prepare for these scenarios and be like, okay, this is how I'm going to act in it. And your emotions and the realness of like being in a fight cage and like actually getting punches thrown at you, or the realness of the emotions going through when someone's just being so harmful and yelling, and just you're feeling all this stuff, you're prepared for that. And if you're prepared for that, you're going to act naturally, in the same way that when I'm coaching athletes, I get them to visualize, you know, what they're doing, the tricks. When I'm working with an entrepreneur, somebody creating a life vision, we create what that looks like, what that feels like, and we go into that space in the mind, and we win in the mind, we experience in the mind, we decide in the mind, and then we act each and every day to get closer and closer to having that experience in reality in a positive frame. So even if there's a negative frame coming in, you can use that same strategy. You know, it might happen. Here's how I'm going to deal with it. And you practice it and you rehearse so that when it happens, it comes out naturally. Just like in fighting, you drill the same drill over and over and over and over and over again. In skateboarding, you do millions of kickflips, and then you do a kickflip board slide, then you do this and that. It's the same principles applied repeatedly. So then you got the pattern interrupt, do something a little bit weird. It could be a phrase. You could ask them a question. You could do something a little bit weird with your body, step left, step right. You could just like, a ridiculous one would just be like cross your eyes as they're messing with you, and then like look at them right in the eyes, and then just cross your eyes again and look at them right in the eyes. And just realize that when you're doing that, it's going to mess them up, but it's like it's diffusing the situation. You're bringing it back. And again, if in certain situations, like it's a boss or whatever, it might piss them off more. So you might want to exercise some, I'd say, acuity or sensory awareness or environmental awareness on what strategy you would use. So you could just do something really light, like your hand, and doing something really weird like that, or moving your body, just something subtle that's going to throw them off. And if you're feeling cheeky, you could try something ridiculous, like turning on a song on, hold on one second, turn on a ridiculous song, and then just start dancing. And they're going to be like, how do I even respond to that? So use the power of the pattern interrupt. Then make a request. Can you please speak to me with respect? Can you please calm down? Can you calm down? Probably not the greatest sentence, but you know, you could say, "Is that fair? Can you please lower your tone of voice? Is that fair?" If we're going to continue this conversation, I'm politely requesting that you drop your tone of voice and treat me with a little bit more respect and kindness. Is that fair, or we can continue later? And so figure out a sentence or two that you're able to rehearse and pop out in those stressful situations, because if it is in a stressful situation, you want to have it rehearsed so it just comes out on command, and that's what you need to do. You need to practice and rehearse. And finally, seek understanding. So you can, once they're done, you could say, repeat back to them the stuff, which most of it will probably be ridiculous. And then you could say, is there anything else? Am I understanding this? Is there anything that I could do to help the situation? And that's it. So, okay. Well, thank you for this video. For those of you guys out there having a little bit of trouble with people not being so kind, I hope that this has supported you. Remember that you being the example, you being compassionate, you being in your power and being able to react to the situation in a place from compassion and kindness is extremely powerful. That person's going to notice it. And other people, if they observe it, will notice it. And just remember that you are awesome, that you do have the power within you to, create worlds and just do anything that you want, because it's a very interesting life experience where it has to come back to taking your own power back. And if you can do that, and you can do it in a compassionate way, and you can remember that, that you're worthy to be treated in a way of kindness and respect. We all are. So just make that a standard for yourself. And I wish you an incredible day, an incredible life. And we'll see you in another episode. Peace.